right, welcome everyone to the Horriflick Podcast. My name is Casey. I'm your host, and I really love movies, so let's get into it. I am 19, and I'm a college student going into education. I want to be a teacher, but I just really love movies. About a year ago, I started my movie review Instagram, and it kind of picked up, it kind of didn't. In my mind, 50 followers was huge on my own. That was a lot of just random people reading my stuff and following me. Regardless though, I just kept posting and I stayed with it and I stuck with it for about 6 months. And then I went through a really hard time and it just kind of fell off. But this is my chance to just do a full reset. I'm gonna keep my movie reviews up because I gained a little bit of a following from that, and I'm not going to take them down because that's part of the past of the Horrific Podcast, and it's who I am. So, and who I am is just someone that loves movies. My dad helped me grow up and fall in love with movies. He was a big movie collector. He loved film. He didn't go to school for it or anything, but honestly, I wish he did. Because I feel like he would have really done something big. But he worked in a video store from the time he could work until whenever. He loved Blockbuster, but where he worked was a family video store. And he just constantly had movies and took them home and watched them and loved them. And he started collecting from VHS and now to digital. It's an insane amount of digital movies that we have, and an insane amount of movies from DVD and Blu-ray, lining the shelves of my basement. It's insane. But he kind of inspired me to appreciate the art of film. And when I was about 9, my parents let me watch the movie The Others. And it's not a horror movie. It's not terrifyingly scary, but it is a Shyamalan movie, and his stuff is kind of thrilling. And so that was my first on the spectrum of horror movie, or scary movie. I guess I should call it scary and not horror. I feel like horror is a lot more extreme than just scary. But they let me watch it. I was 9, and it wasn't that scary, and I just begged for more. The second movie that I watched that I can remember was The Skeleton Key, and that one was a little bit more my style. It was still a slow burn thriller movie, and after that it was Murder by Numbers, and that one's more of a murder mystery thriller. And so my parents didn't really understand that I just really liked scary stuff. I liked being scared. I liked the adrenaline. I liked not knowing what was going to happen next and hiding my face behind my hands. The next, the scary movie that I first remember, not thriller, not borderline horror, not nothing. It was The Mist, Stephen King's The Mist movie. And that movie scared the shit out of me as a kid. I was probably 11 or 12. I went over for a sleepover with some family friends, and all I remember is laying under this blanket, hiding my face under my blanket and playing a game on my phone or my iPod, because I was just so terrified of what was happening. And I wish I hadn't, because I feel had I not shied away from watching that movie at such a young age, I'd be completely different now. But from then on, it was just a scary movie every once in a while when my parents thought it was appropriate. And my dad being so into movies, he was really strict on them about what I could watch, what I couldn't watch, based on sexual content and based on language and gore. And so he let me watch Saw when I was 15. I think he let me watch the first Saw when I was 15, the second and third when I was 16, and then after that point, 17 and 18, I just watched the rest of them by myself. And I love the Saw franchise. I think that those movies are really psychological and not just gory. Like, you have to pay attention in them. And I know that like a lot of people that watch movies are like, oh, you have to pay attention in order to understand it. But like, you really do for the Saw movies. And there are a few other franchises out there where you have to pay attention. But after 18, I just did a deep dive into horror movies and just started like, there's this picture of an iceberg of all the like innocent horror movies versus like literal, like just ones that are like illegal to own, to watch. I didn't get that far. I'm not going that far. But I don't know, like Human Centipede, not one that like people would just like be like, oh, let's watch that tonight. It was like it was just one that I like wanted to watch. Like, that was an experience. I watched the first and the second one. I haven't seen the third one with the prisoners of the inmates. They all get their mouths and butts sewn together. But I did watch the first one and the second one where the mentally disabled kid recreates it. Just absolutely horrific. Just genuinely terrifying. But I loved it. Edge of my seat the whole time. Same with, it's another gore one that I like. I don't know. I feel like Human Centipede is like the most popular one that people know, and so it's like one that's easy to talk about because a lot of people are like, ew, I would never watch that, but then a lot of people are like, oh my god, you watched that? But it's something that I like. And I found that a lot of B films also have just a lot of really good gore in them. I recently saw Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey in theaters. Absolute B film, should not have had a theater release. The acting was horrible, but the gore was phenomenal. I liked the gore in it. And I think that that's one thing that B film movies from the UK do really good with is gore. There's a movie, I made a review on it on my Instagram. It's called Funhouse, and it has one of the Skarsgårds in it, but it's like the youngest one, like not known, just starting off acting, not just starting off, but like he's not up there in acting yet, and like his quality, you can tell it's like not ready for anything super big. But it's on Hulu, free to watch on Hulu, and I think it's like 2018, 2019, and it's about all these influencers, like TV stars, social media stars, that like come together and like live in one house and like think they're on a reality TV show, and they're told they're being on a reality TV show, or at the end of the week all of the viewers like vote their least favorite person out. But what they come to find out after the first week is that that least voted person dies brutally in front of them. And that gore was like, I was kind of standoffish about that movie because of the acting, but the plot wasn't bad and the gore was not bad either. And that one was not on my list. And the list is a big Excel sheet of about 200 movies on them, give or take a few. And I've only seen about 50 of them, but these are like a bunch of B films that I want to watch. And I should have had it on my list, but it's definitely like, it's a one that I'll rewatch. Funhouse is one that I will rewatch, and not a lot of B films are like that. Like, I will not be rewatching Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. It was not worth my time. It was not worth my energy. It just wasn't worth it. I will not be rewatching Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. But the list, back to the list. This is kind of like my guide for the next years. Like, I'm going to be watching 150 of these movies to finish this list out, and I'm still like working on adding them. But my goal is to watch at least 2 movies a week while I'm in school, 2 horror movies a week, and then come on this podcast and review them, get on a stream and talk about other movies that I've seen, and make reviews on my Instagram. And so this Excel sheet has the global rating, whether it's rated R, PG-13, not rated, whatever. It has whether or not I've seen it or not. It has the streaming platform it's available on for easy access. And this took me so long to make. I made this in 2020. It probably took me like 2 or 3 months during COVID to actually make this Excel sheet. And I still use it to this day. But it also has a summary of the movie, and so if I'm really not feeling one, like Ginger Snaps is one that I want to watch, but I don't know if I'm ready for like a teen movie about werewolves, you know? And so like it has a summary, and so if I'm really not feeling one, I can just look at another one. And so when I was making this Excel sheet, I also made a Discord server. This was 2020. I was a kid. But I made a Discord server based around horror movies. And I wish that I still had access to that Discord account so I could revamp this Discord and like share it out on the podcast and like talk to a bunch of my listeners about horror movies and like what their favorite ones are and like what ones they've seen, haven't seen, what ones I should review, and just talk to people about it, because I feel like having a community where you can talk about something like that is so important for a successful podcast. So the schedule for this podcast, it's going to vary because I'm in school, but I have a plan to upload at least one podcast episode a week. So that's 4 times a month, which I know a lot of people are like, they post more than that, but I know a lot of people that don't post even that much. Like personally, I like a podcast, and they haven't uploaded in 2 months. But before that, it was like every month, every 2 weeks. But they were on a contract with Spotify, and I'm not doing that, so it's a little bit different for me. But I plan for these podcast episodes to talk about singular movies, talk about the trilogies, the sequels, the remakes, the everything. But one thing that I really am going to focus on and highlight a lot are the B films that are worth the watch and what ones are not worth the watch. That way, if like you're having a little lazy Sunday and you don't know what to do and you want to watch a movie but you don't really have any new ones to watch, you can just come on here and listen to me talk about whether or not a B film movie on Netflix is good or not. My podcast episodes are going to be between 45 and 60 minutes long. This one is an exception because it's just an introduction. It's just me talking about the podcast, what we're going to be expecting, and the list and the rating system, which I'm going to tell you about, because I do also rate these movies. And I do also plan to stream, like I had mentioned previously, and the streaming is probably going to be between an hour and 2 hours, I'm hoping. It just depends on my school schedule. It depends on the workload that I have, but I'm almost done with school and I'll be out for the summer, and so that will be really nice for me to just be able to focus on this. And I plan on having like my friends on here to talk to me about it, so you can get like raw, honest, vulnerable opinions based on movies and whether or not you should watch them or not. My dad might come on here and talk for a little bit about his favorite movies. I would love to have my dad on here and like bond with me over this podcast and not just movies. I also have an opportunity lined up with, they used to be the Gruesome Twosome Movie Review Some, but now they're the Film Spark Podcast. And I will be submitting a bonus episode to them to see if I get a full episode on their podcast, which would be really nice because I've been following them for a while, since I created my Instagram, my review Instagram. I used to have this really long name, but it was called Watching Movies So You Don't Have To. I thought it was straightforward. I thought it was perfect. But when making a podcast, like I tried to just type that long ass name into Google, and like my fingers were messing up everything. Like it looked all gibberish. Like it wasn't a good name for a podcast. And so I think Horriflick is like so simple, but like so like individualistic. It hasn't been done before. It's not like anything that you've seen. And so I'm hoping to get with Ebony and have her on the podcast too. That'd be really nice. So this rating system. I rate the soundtrack, whether or not the music made a vibe, whether or not this movie had a soundtrack that made me feel some type of way, whether it was creepy enough, whatever. I rate it out of 10. I rate the acting. If the acting's not good, it's probably not a top tier film, and probably not always going to be worth your time. It definitely won't be always worth your time. The horror level I rate, if it's not as scary like the others, it's like a 3. It had that atmosphere. It had you enveloped in the story, but it wasn't scary. And like a 10 on the horror level, probably like Human Centipede. Like not everyone can handle that. Not everyone can stomach that. I also rate the cinematography, and no, I'm not a cinematographer. I'm not going to school for cinematography. It's just, if the camera's shaky, if I see a boom mic, it just kind of ruins the environment that movie creates. I rate the gore because I'm a gore person. And if you don't like lots of blood, then maybe this horror movie isn't for you. I rate the plot because if it's messy, if it's jumpy, if it's hard to understand, it's not a good movie. And then I do an overall rating out of 10. And not a lot of movies have made it to be a 10. And a lot of B films are like under 6, I'd say. And if they're under 6, not always worth a watch. And so like The Black Phone that came out last July, I rated it an 8.5 out of 10. It wasn't the best, but it wasn't the worst. I thought it was a great original idea. The acting was okay, but the child actors, like, they need more help, more experience. And I know that this movie got postponed because of COVID, but they could have reworked some stuff. And then like the 2012 film John Dies at the End is like a 6 out of 10. It wasn't like, it was a B film. It wasn't great, but it wasn't absolutely horrible either. And then there's a Hulu original called I'm Just Fucking With You, and this movie was ass. I regret watching it. It was like a 4 out of 10 for me. There wasn't anything there. I wasted my time with that movie. And the thing is, one of the guys that made the soundtrack for that movie commented like a bunch of emojis on that post where I talk about how shit that movie is, so it's funny. But I think that's everything. I think I covered everything that I wanted to talk about in this episode, and I am very excited to continue doing this and hold myself accountable, and like hold myself to this schedule of uploading. But thank you guys so much for listening to this introduction and getting to know me, getting to know the podcast, and I really hope that you guys stay tuned for episode 2. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you later.